Hello and welcome to the Gleaner Podcast for Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. I'm Chantal Hortop, Managing Editor for The Gleaner and host for this season of the podcast. Today, The Gleaner's Sarah Rennie speaks to two key figures from the Ormstown Saracens Rugby Club. The Saracens have a storied history, both locally and across the province, after more than 50 years in existence. Many players with the club have played at the provincial and even national level, and perhaps more importantly, the members have maintained a tradition of community involvement and continue to play an important role in Chateauguay Valley life. The club recently unveiled a new logo honouring its two founding members, the late Rod Beattie and Dave Hardy, who continues to live and breathe rugby today. Since arriving in Ormstown to teach at CVR more than 50 years ago, Hardy has been instrumental in developing the sport of rugby in Ormstown and across Quebec. He's not only a founding member of the Ormstown Saracens Rugby Club, but he has played and refereed around the world and served as coach of both the McGill and Concordia rugby squads. In fact, the two Montreal universities duke it out each year for the Dave Hardy Cup, named in his honour. He's an inspiration to younger players and team members, including Phylicia Brunette, who joined the Saracens 16 years ago after discovering the sport in Cégep. She has now been the club president over the past 3 years and is looking forward to seeing the sport continue to develop and grow in popularity in the Valley. With that, I'll leave you in Sarah's capable hands for her chat with Dave and Phylicia. Happy listening!
All right. I'm super excited about this. I've been a big fan of the Saracens for a long time. I've always really liked the sport of rugby, and the Saracens have always been so much fun. It's been fun to cover, fun to watch. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the history. So can you tell me a little bit more about the history of the club?
Okay. Two people who came to the Valley, Rod Beattie and myself, we actually met on a rugby field in Montreal against each other. I eventually moved out and I was taking students from the school to play. And sitting down one evening, we just decided, rather than traveling to Montreal all the time, start a club in Ormstown, which is what we did.
How did you come up with the name of the Saracens?
Well, the colour and the name. Colour is the colour of the club that Rod came from in Langham, in Scotland. And the Saracens, ironically, my wife at the time, she came up with the name. And when I went back to England, that was the side I played for.
Okay, so there's a little bit of England, a little bit of Scotland, certainly in the mix here. What are some highlights from the earlier years? Did it come together easily, or was it a bit of a struggle?
Well, to begin with, they wouldn't let us in the league. We had to prove ourselves, which we did. And then we went in the league and entered it. At that time, there were only two leagues, and we entered the second league. We won that for 4 years in a row. And it was all good because it was a combination of Rod Scottish, me English. We had an Australian guy. We had Jim Morton, president of Klein and Tinker at the time. He was there, and then all the kids from the Valley, And we went. The league then was Montreal and Ottawa, and we would go to Ottawa. We surprised people there. We would go to Saranac Lake. They eventually went on tours to Scotland and Newfoundland and Winnipeg and things like this. But that was more after because I moved back to England and then came back, and I drifted into other things. I was refereeing more than playing. And Rod Beattie was the driving force there.
That's fantastic. You've sort of brought up a couple of the players, but you've honored a few of your players over the years, including with your new logo. Can you tell me a little bit about the players, some of the big names that helped get the game started in Ormstown?
Well, there's Rod and myself. I have a list of the 25 original players, and these were people who were still at school. People literally we dragged out to the bar in Huntingdon on a Saturday night. We weren't big enough to take on other people, but we were fit enough and we had fun.
How has the game changed then over the years? It sounds like it was organized pickup for the first few years.
Well, it was, but as it's happening now, in my opinion, there's a bit of a rebirth at Saracens now, but with a slight difference. The difference being that the first life of the Saracens, it wasn't run by women, it was all men. Now it's the reverse.
Okay. And the game itself hasn't changed much then in 50 years.
As an ex-referee, yes, it has. The laws have changed. The basic concept is still there, but the way the laws are now, they cater the laws towards safety.
Okay. So maybe I'll ask a little bit about sort of the club now then. So how has it developed or changed? When you mentioned the women coming on board, what else has changed?
Well, the big change, when we started, we did not have, there was nothing for the young children. Now you can start playing at 6 years of age. And if we can get that going through all the age groups, the Saracens could actually get back to the level they were, which was the top club in Quebec. When we started the club, there was no rugby in CVR. Now it's established. Many have played for Quebec. We did at one time. We had 3 men's teams and 2 women's teams. Getting back to that, it then becomes a huge community project.
So I imagine I'd like to get back to how it developed, especially bringing women on board. But I imagine the pandemic also had something to do with the team sort of falling back a little bit. But were they struggling before then?
Yeah, so the women's team started in 2002, and it was some of one of the original men's players, Doug Murdoch, and then coach Patrick Bordeaux-Collum that got them started up. And it was mostly that they'd been coaching them in high school, and then those girls reached senior age to play and wanted a team, so they started one up. And as Dave mentioned, built it up over the years, and we did have 2 teams for a few years. Unfortunately, just as cycles go through, we had people who moved on to other things, and we're struggling for numbers before the pandemic. Unfortunately, in 2018, we had to pair up with another club to just have enough people for one team. And we did that for a couple of years. And then unfortunately with the pandemic, it kind of was the death blow. So we haven't had a senior women's team since 2019, but we're working on it this year to relaunch, hopefully with a full team, and get back into the league to play province wide. It's a big project. We need to have 22 registered players to be able to put a team in the league. So starting from nothing to up to 22 is a challenge, but we do have lots of interested players and motivated players. So that definitely helps and makes the work worthwhile.
Can you tell me a little bit about the mini Saracens and how that developed? Because that's a pretty awesome program.
So that is a labor of love also originally started by Serge Tremblay in the early 2010s with just a small group of local kids. And then Jeannie Bryson took over in 2013 and really spent the time building the structure for the program and the different age levels. And it's just exploded across the valley since then. We did take a little dip with the pandemic. Obviously, numbers went down, but we've been building it back up. Now we have a winter program for the kids as well. So we do 10 weeks in the indoors in the winter to get the skills up and get them to try it out, and then bring them onto the field for the summer session where we play jamborees across the province. And host one of the biggest jamborees in the province here in Ormstown. We very easily have over 300 kids that show up to play rugby on a Sunday. So it's great to see.
Yeah, I spoke with one of the Saracens coaches at one point. He was working with some of the smaller kids, and he said how important it was to introduce them to rugby from a very young age, but to introduce them to the culture as well. So it's that they become a part of the club. And I thought that was really interesting that the Saracens are welcoming, 6-year-olds into their club as members, not just as, a group of players.
That's one of the beauties of rugby, is that it's very inclusive. Anyone can play, no matter your size, your speed, your ability. Everyone can learn to play and have a place on the field and in the club. And it becomes a family. There, you don't just join to be at the field for your one game and then go home. There's the parties afterwards. There's the club events, and the social side of it is huge. So it's why it's lasted so long and has such an impact, because when you join, you're joining a family.
That's really interesting. And I think that's something about rugby that's maybe misunderstood. I think people sort of understand it as not even an aggressive game, and it certainly looks like a violent game, but there really is a culture and a community to it, even between two sides.
Absolutely. Every week we play a different club, and every relationship is different. We always have our long held rivals where the games are a little rougher and maybe a little dirtier, but at the end of it all, everyone shakes hands and has a drink together, and it's still just a rugby community that comes together. So, no matter the rivalries, and there are lots, everyone still gets together at the end and has a great time. So
over the years, the club really has shown incredible dedication towards its members, especially some of its members. You've got awards that are named in the honor of some of your players, and you just unveiled a new logo that certainly honors two players. Can you tell me a little bit about that tradition?
I mean, obviously, over 50 years of history, there's lots of players who've not only been instrumental on the field, but in developing the club and building it up to what it is today. So, just one of the small ways to honor those people is to name awards after them that represent some of the things that they've done for the club. So, our Hardest Worker Award, named after someone who was a really hard worker, and our MVPs, and we have the Rod Beatty Award named after one of our founders. So it's just a small way to represent what they've contributed to the club over the years. And the new logo was a similar idea in that we wanted to preserve the history of the club, because changing the logo wasn't easy for some of our older members, but we wanted to modernize a bit, but still keep the values that went with the original. So we wanted our founders represented in the Scottish thistle and the English rose, and then the shape itself to represent some of our biggest values, and that we chose to represent longevity, tradition, boldness, and confidence, because we feel like those are things that are important to our club and that represent how we put ourselves forward on the field and in the community.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the community, I don't remember an Ormstown fair where there haven't been Saracens lining the parade routes, in the parking areas. There is an incredible dedication, and maybe Mr. Hardy can talk to this too a little bit. That must have started right from the very beginning.
Yeah, the club doesn't exist just as an entity. It exists as part of a community. And by reaching out, by helping, by having fundraisers, there was a need, and they provided a service which is, I believe it's valued by the community.
And that mentality has obviously carried on. I mean, there's the scholarships. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about those, that side of the development as well.
So one of the reasons we're lucky as a club and that allows us to develop is our partnership with CVR and being able to use the fields and the facilities at the school. A lot of clubs struggle in that aspect, either financially because they have to pay to rent a space, or just having access to a space at all. So we're very, very lucky for that. And one of the ways we try to give back to the school is by providing the bursary, which we renamed last year to honor a former member, Rick Otier. He was, all about bringing people into the club and giving people a chance on the field. So with the bursaries, the idea is to allow our junior players who might not have been able to afford to play otherwise to get on the field and have their summer season. And the goal is to expand that to have a financial aid program in general. So yes, bursaries to deserving students who work hard for them, but also to just open it up to anyone who needs the financial aid to play. That's the ultimate goal, to make it accessible to anyone regardless of the financial situation.
I guess that's part of it, is making sure that people are able to access the game. So I guess I would just ask quickly, how did you both start playing rugby?
I played soccer first. In my family, I was the less well-educated one. So I Okay, in the English system, my brother and sister, they passed the 11 plus to get to the grammar school. I failed it twice before I eventually passed it and got to the same school. The difference was this was a school that only played rugby. You had no choice. So I'd gone from soccer into rugby, and okay, it was the best move I ever made. Yeah, and that has taken me through school, college. It's taken me all over the world.
Wow. So maybe I'll go back to Phylicia and how she got involved, but can you tell me a little bit about your career?
Well, as a teacher, teaching in North London for 5 years, I got married and decided I was going to go overseas. I applied to South Africa. Now, to prove your ancestry back 5 generations at a time. New Zealand, no. Australia, only enough I thought was too far. And 2 weeks before we got married, and 2 weeks before I was due to come here, move, I was booked on a plane to British Columbia. And the Director General of the Shottingham Valley School Board came over, went to Canada House. They phoned me and asked me if I'd come for an interview. The result of that interview was driving up to CVR and wondering what the hell I was doing. But it was, my life has been all series of mistakes. That's one of the best mistakes I've made.
Wow. So it does it. It holds on to you for your life then.
I've said it's the best social network in the world. Even to the point I went to referee in Australia. In Melbourne, they found out it was my birthday, and just immediately they put on a birthday party. And they looked after me in Australia. I've been across this country at the taxpayer's expense. I've been back to England refereeing. I'll tell you, it's the best. My children involved. I mean, the blessing to me is that my grandson, Wolfie, if someone had told me this kid would be interested in rugby, I would have referred you to a mental institution. But this kid he's quiet, but he loves the game.
So does some of that sound familiar to you? Those aspects, Phylicia, about how you got involved?
Yeah. I mean, despite going to CVR and the great rugby program they have there, I didn't start at CVR. I started at CEGEP level. And straight to the social aspect, a friend of mine was like, hey, we're missing girls for the team. Do you want to come out and try? And I'm like, okay. And I mean, that was the end of that. 15 years later, I'm still there. So it brings you in. And like I said, it's like joining a family. I started playing there and then joined the Saracens that summer. It's where I met my husband and all of my best friends. And it's, it brings you along. And even like if it hadn't been for rugby, I don't know if I'd be doing the job that I do now. After an injury, I had to do physio to get back on the field, and that was where I discovered my interest for that. And then so I went back to school and became a physiotherapy technologist, and then that's my career now. So it really works its way into all aspects of your life in a great way. Can't ask for better than that.
So then no hesitation whatsoever in suggesting that people get involved with the Saracens now?
Absolutely not. I mean, we can always use more help, but the group that we have now is just such a hardworking, dedicated group, and we want so much to expand our rugby family because it means so much to us. So we want to show the rest of the world that it's a great place to bring your kids, to bring your family, and even if you're not there with, say, kids and family, but even if you're the single guy or the single girl, it's a great place to come in and meet a friend group, a partner. That's what happened to me, and then build a family.
That's fantastic. I have run out of questions. This has been a really fascinating conversation. And like I said, it's a lot of fun. And I really wish the best of luck to the Saracens for another 50 years. And hopefully you can get enough women to come back and we can see the team start to develop and come back. Because like I said, it's a lot of fun going to the games. It's a lot of fun watching the games. but it's also, I imagine, a lot of fun for you guys to see the game come back and develop in Ormstown again.
It seems to be a recurring theme as we look back at the history of the Valley, how the dedication of the people in our community has made great things happen. I hope you're enjoying the behind-the-scenes look at all these aspects of the very fabric of the Chateauguay Valley as much as I am. Be sure to tune in again next Wednesday, February 14th, for a look at yet another piece of the Valley's history. This podcast is made possible in part by funding from the Government of Canada through the Official Language Community Media Consortium, as well as a grant from the Bourse d'Initiative en Entrepreneuriat Collectif, a call for projects designed to support the creation and development of social economy enterprises and projects across the Montérégie region. Sound editing and sound design for the Gleaner Podcast is done by Stacey Pennington. Our theme music is by Christopher Pennington. It is produced by me, Chantal Hortop. Don't forget to subscribe to the Gleaner Podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode. For more Gleaner content, check out our website at www.the-gleaner.com. I'll also put that link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us again next time.